Ladies and gentle beings, welcome to Memes Testing, where I play games wrong and see if they're still completable. Today I'll be diving into City Skylines to remove basic functions of the game to see if it is still possible for our tiny toys to survive without any water. However, with no water zoned, no one will actually show up to the party, so we'll have to improvise. A little freestyle jazz with basic human rights, as it were. Because we do have a viable substitute for water in this game, well, hopefully viable, we will be attempting to power the city on the raw, unfiltered refuse from our fellow inhabitants of our little town. This is potentially possible because each of our new friends will bring with them a single portion of their own making, and with a little civil engineering, we can route this right back down into the water pipe and recycle it for future use. With this being the game plan, we must define the end conditions for our little experiment. As this game has no victory conditions, we'll have to improvise. Since this game gates unlocks via population, this will be our metric for success. Once we have 90,000 population, we have won. Now onto the city itself. Since we are abstaining from water, how about we also completely remove the temptation from our little guests by also removing all industry that would also rely on the input of water. Because of this, I've decided that a desert map would be the best option for us thematically. Well, there isn't one in-game. This one from the workshop will be our best option. Now that the foreplay is over, we can move on to the actual meat of our little engagement, and for us it is a big one, as right now with the city connected directly to the sewer mains, the health of our population is showing at a staggering 2%. This would mean that our population lives for maybe a day or so, and then expires, leaving those shells of former life littering our mahogany metropolis. However, this is not too bad, as we can simply demolish the buildings and move on with our lives. However, the main issue does come when we attempt to grow the population, as currently people are just moving out when they become too sick to survive. But due to a weird gating mechanic in City Skylines, death is not actually unlocked by default. In order to die, you must first have a cemetery in order to process bodies. So, one existential crisis later, we eventually unlock cemeteries, and like clockwork, all of our sick guests fall over like some kind of choreographed tragedy. Unfortunately, with death comes our next problem, as now we can no longer just demolish the buildings that have become abandoned in our city, and now we have to actually move the remains of our refuse-consuming population before we can repurpose and reuse the area. This leads to an unfortunate death knell that echoes out over our first city, and yes, this is only the first, as with a massive drop in population, our revenue plummets, and we hit bankruptcy. This leads us to create the Human Centipede 2, and here we learn from our previous transgressions against humanity and provide a more substantial service, as this is where I actually lucked out and the glory of Gaben shined upon me, as the day after I was having this exact issue and starting up the run again, the Steam Summer Sale happened. This allowed us to pick up some tasty DLC at a much more reasonable price. The main tool we'll be focusing on is green cities and industries, as with the green buildings we can produce eco versions of the same buildings, and in this case we will be using the eco sewage outlet. For some reason this alone reduces the pollutants that the denizens output, allowing for a much longer but not necessarily happier life. Along with this, we learn of a new quirk of this eco building, as it will not start output until there is at least a drop of source material. This is likely due to a slight reduction from processing having to be accounted for in the code. This is solved by something I have lovingly called a poop jumper. And like Mould's chain experiment, the flow will continue until the source runs out, which is hopefully never, as that would mean our population has died out. This should allow us to survive that death wave that happens as soon as we realize that cemeteries exist, However, this is only the beginning, as health remains low despite the reduction in bacteria. But we do make some headway leading into Human Centipede 3, learning the value of using these custom industries to try and float a sinking ship. This is where our main sprint happens, as we have partially conquered the bacterial enemy, and at this point, our only goal is upward momentum. We can consistently make it to about 2,000 to 3,000 population, but this is a far cry from our 90,000 goal. This is where I learned that I can make a tiny, and I mean tiny, profit from our cities. With an aggressive enough industry, this leads to an interesting development that wasn't expected. If we simply save enough money while we're in the green, we can just turn on a large number of hospitals at the same time, allowing us to have, say, 17,000 patients, and allowing us to unlock the water processing plant, which should remove 85% of the bacteria in the water, if the tooltip is to be believed. From some testing, it looks like while a patient is being treated, they're not able to die. As long as they can make it to the hospital, of course, but this will allow us to pad our numbers until the buildings we need are unlocked. This led to a very strange city build, where through the use of two mods, one to allow auto-demolition and the other to simulate time at a much faster pace, I decided to set auto-demolish on a very low speed, which was replicatable by myself, this being about 5 demolitions per in-game day, and the other mod to move the game at around 512 times speed, allowing us to gain about 700,000 in-game money for every real hour wasted. A few hours down and we have amassed a small fortune. With this, the above can be tested and proved correct. But there is one major issue. We don't have enough money to continue. It turns out while your entire population is bedridden in hospitals, no one is working. And with our solution being to purify the water before it reaches these pitiful souls, the transitional period between hospital-bound and mostly clean living proved to be too lengthy. At this point, the challenge did hit the back burner for me, as I could only provision so much time during my work week for it, and was able to pick away at it slowly over the course of a few weekends.
Later.
Well, time to relax and see what's going on YouTube. Oh hey, one of my favorite creators uploaded a video. Let's check out what it... Well, looks like I got addressed this. So this was actually going to be the first memes tested that I was going to upload to the channel, but due to illness getting in the way, things that were going to take longer were pushed back, and I decided to just unwind while being sick, playing Fallout 4, which actually turned out to be the video I uploaded last week. And it looks to have been at least somewhat successful in comparison to my other videos, so thank you for that if you did watch it. I do very much appreciate it. Seeing this video made me realize that I may have to scrap my idea, but after watching it, I realized that they also stalled at 17,000 population, and they were already working with unlocks available from the start of their game. This means my goal of 90,000 population has not been reached with this insane challenge, and thus the Human Centipede Redux has been born. So I set back out to try and finish this horrible mess. Unlike before, I decided to start from scratch instead of building on the same map in the exact same way with marginally more information. I decided to very slowly increase our population in increments, which arguably was the thing that pushed me ahead in this version, as mass building and then mass exodus was not exactly the most sustainable method of growth, but steady expansion leads to steady death and allows for a smoother ebb and flow of our pitiful peons. A focus on industries was our best method for sustained cash flow, as if we're going for the hospital sprint as before, we would be best to have at least a smooth increase in cost, with a sum in reserve to purchase the water filters and cycle out all the pollutants, with also leaving an additional cushion of funds available for a few weeks' worth of time for the population to stabilize. This was barely achievable, and we get to our prize, the ability to feed our people only 15% human fudge. This is underwhelming, however, as we still have a massive amount of sick people, and we have to spend some cash on auxiliary medical buildings to up our overall health. This does lead to the construction of many public pools and saunas to give us maximum contact with our water supply, but somehow increase the overall health. Eventually, we did unlock the eco water processing plant, and this is our final stop on our march through misery, as this eliminates almost 100% of the pollution in our water and leads to a normal city building loop. Overall, this is an interesting end to our little experiment, as we easily climbed the ranks after this, far surpassing our 90,000 population goal. In this period of growth, we were even able to keep our budget in the green, mainly because our budget was around 95% medical buildings. But hey, a win's a win. Due to this belt tightening and embezzling $300 million from the city through means that aren't super important right now, we were actually able to build a full hydroelectric setup, powered entirely by our own human waste. This means we are truly, truly self-sufficient and have become the perfect being, all-consuming,
all-providing, forever entangled in a ring of sustainable consumption.
And with that, we're done. Big thank you to Ambiguous Amphibian for inspiring me to make videos on these types of games to begin with, and for spurring me on unintentionally after the fact, while I was stuck thinking this wasn't possible. If you are still here, I appreciate your time, and if you think it was well spent, a like or subscribe goes a long way to letting me know. If you have any suggestions for other challenges, please let me know in the comments, and I'll see you when we do the next thing.